Morning. We're at chapter 7. Can't believe it. We've made it, and we've made it to the part of Eric's book which really starts to apply. So what? You've read this book. So what? Remembering these are my ideas, not Eric's, but I really believe he meant us at this point to begin to ask ourselves, what do we do with this information? And it's so key. Any book, any Bible passage, we ought to seek to understand that passage and then seek to obey or apply that passage. Same with a book. What is this book having to say? And interestingly enough, what he entitled this? Loving America. And this chapter is a call to love America. And we're going to start with Lincoln's words here. And I want us to take this in and listen to it. He's speaking to America before the Civil War. He says, I am loath to close. This is in his first inaugural speech. I am loath to close, he writes. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. He then delivers the speech's final words, a passage that has become famous. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. We ought to memorize that. We are not enemies, but we're coming close to being enemies. When we open our Facebook page and there's rants about our government, one way or the other, we are close to becoming enemies. When our senators are so engrossed in fighting each other, they won't do anything for we the people. This is editorial, but I'm tired of being called the American people, but nobody's calling my house to see what the American people really want. Let's call on each other to not be enemies. That's the call to love our country. Page 224, he says this. The greatest test of our republic would rely not merely on our political institutions and on our great leader who was speaking those words, but on something else. It would depend on our, keyword, our love for America. It doesn't matter who's the president of the United States, because we the people have joined together to love our country. That is our call. Then he asks the question, but he goes, how can we love our country? What do we do? Well, he suggests a couple things. I may throw in an editorial comment, and I'll tell you when I do. But we ask the question, is our love being prevented in these days by failings of our leaders? Does that keep us from loving our country? He cites the My Lai massacre, a terrible point in American history, where many were slaughtered unnecessarily. Did that keep us from loving our country? Does an election keep us from loving our country? But yet we are called to love our country. Is loving our country outdated? Was it a great idea at the time of Lincoln? Great idea at the time of Eisenhower? Great idea all along our history, but not such a great idea now? I'll ask the editorial question, is love for self preventing me to love our country? And here is where our love for country is tied to Jesus' command. Jesus says, love your neighbors as yourself. Now, when Jesus said that, we can argue what he meant by loving self. Sometimes people go, that's a selfish love. We shouldn't focus on that. But Jesus said it, and I think no matter how you take that verse, you assume Jesus knew that we would know what love of self looked like, whether it's selfish or humble. And Metaxas makes the comment. He goes, if I'm going to give money, I can't give money unless I possess it. If I'm going to give love, I can't give love unless I possess it. So page 230, he says this. What is love? He defines it. To love something is to see it as we think God would see it. You want a great prayer? Stop your Facebook post, number one, and the prayer ought to be, God, help me see my political opposition as you would see it. Can you imagine if we begin to encourage people to pray that prayer? Do you think God would answer that prayer? Absolutely. God, help me see others as you see them. What a great prayer. So we're left with two great ideas on how we love our country. I'm a couple chapters back. He says, we love our country. Boy, this is tough. When we allow dark secrets of our country to be exposed and told. With political folks, what's the first thing they do when accused of something? Point at somebody else. It wasn't my fault. We didn't do it. What do I do? Maybe the same thing. But when I allow dark secrets to be told about myself, they're in the open, and now I can deal with it. Like the beach ball I release I can't deal with a beach ball when it's under the water, if I'm in the swimming pool, but if I release it, I can deal with it on top. So we should face those dark secrets. Number two, this is strong, we should remember the rituals. That we should read historical books. Go read a book on Lincoln and Washington. Read a book on the Revolutionary War. With most of you, I'm just begging, please go read a book. Read this book if you haven't, and I'm assuming you are. Memorize poetry. Oh my gosh. Listen, my children, and you will hear the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. That kind of stuff. Memorize the Declaration of the Independence preamble, the preamble to the Constitution. Go to 4th of July celebration this year. Fly the flag. How about this? Go to Washington, D.C. and take a look around and remember our country. Look at the statues of these great people. Page 245 says this, and I'll close with this. As soon as I get to it, I'm going to close. Won't be but a second. I'm here. Metaxas closes this chapter with this. Page 245. If we do not love America and teach our children to love America as God loves her, we can never love the world beyond our shores, and we can never teach our children to do the same. Let me apply that and put that back to God. If we do not learn to love God, and we're invited into a relationship to love God through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, very God on earth, if we do not learn to love God, we will never learn to love each other. We will never learn to properly love self, and therefore never learn to love our country. Explore that, live that, go find help, call us, we'll help. We'll see you soon.